May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, our strength and Redeemer. As any married or even soon-to-be married couple can attest, there is an abundance of planning that takes place when a wedding occurs. From dresses to linens, food and music, they are the social events unlike any other. This was especially true at a time of John's Gospel passage. Weddings lasted for days, sometimes as long as a week. They were viewed as the best party of all. Imagine then the disastrous social implications that would come with running out of wine at the reception. For a host to be found lacking in such a critical aspect of hospitality would be very damaging to a couple and to their families for years to come. With all of the options that Mary had, it is uncertain why she chose to bring the problem to Jesus at a time when he was so new in his ministry. She could have alerted the management at the facility or those responsible for planning the event. Mary decided to turn the problem over to Jesus with complete confidence that he would be able to do something to help, all the while being empathetic to her hosts. Mary believed in Jesus' gifts. After all, just a short time ago, the angel stood before her and told her all that would unfold. She knew something about him that he had yet to learn about himself. As his mother, she was the person who knew him better than anyone else, a source of unconditional love and support. The response she received is far from the type of response that we would expect from Jesus. What concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come. He was a guest at the wedding, early in his earthly ministry, and it was the first time his disciples were gathered with him. This was a defining moment for Jesus. It became important for him to show that the mother-son relationship that characterized his early years before baptism had changed. If the mother of Jesus was petitioning his help, it must be for a greater reason than simply because he is her son. While it meant no disrespect to his mother, the time had come to do the will of his heavenly Father as the Son of God. A simple direction to the staff, do whatever he tells you. It could also be considered a test or an invitation for Jesus to discover for himself not only who he really is, but also what he is capable of doing. Mary knew that Jesus would respond to the crisis that was unfolding with genuine love from God. After a pause, Jesus prayed to his Father in heaven about the situation and acted as he felt was appropriate in his own time, as many of us often do. This was when the disciples also began to believe in him as well. What relevance could these exchanges possibly have for us all these years later? The message seems simple, but yet so important. Whatever is troubling you, whatever you find yourself in need of, bring the issue to the Lord with the confidence of Mary, knowing that he will be able to do something to help. Here's the frustrating part. In his own time and in his own way. If you're like me, having the patience to wait is the hardest part. A wise man I once knew told me that if you give a problem to God, you don't get to take it back. It doesn't belong to you anymore, and the logistics of how it's solved are not for you to decide. Mary must have known this too. She gave the problem to Jesus and went on to enjoy the wedding. In turning the water into wine, Jesus took the ordinary and made it extraordinary. Herbert O'Driscoll notes that an ordinary setting became the showcase for extraordinary display of power. The water vessels were there for the purpose of ritual washing of feet at the upcoming celebration of Passover, as well as for the washing of other vessels. Jesus instructed the servants to take the ordinary vessels, to fill them with ordinary water, just before he turned them into something extraordinary. Jesus can also turn us from ordinary to extraordinary if we follow his teachings and listen to what he has to tell us. We are the ordinary vessels through which God's grace is poured out into the world, the ordinary vessels that are made extraordinary if we have the courage to do what we are called to do and to live our lives for the purpose that God has intended for us. There are times in our lives when we come to experience gifts within ourselves that we never knew we had. If nothing else positive come out of this pandemic, it has given many of us a chance to discover some of these gifts within ourselves. Many people I know have used the time to look inward and discover new talents or learn a new skill. People often cross our path or come into our lives and lead us to discover our gifts in the most unexpected and beautiful ways. In these moments, Herbert O'Driscoll suggests that we ourselves turning to the Lord and saying, "You kept the good wine until now." These moments are often the ones that prove God has concern for the whole person and the whole community, bringing the reality of God's love into the extraordinary aspects of people's lives. We can learn a lot from Mary's audacity and trust that Jesus is willing to work with any of us. For some, it's the challenges of finding food and shelter for the destitute and displaced. For others, it's interceding for people in situations where others might simply shrug their shoulders and say things seem hopeless or impossible. In these times, empathy and compassion are in short supply, yet it seems as though Mary had these gifts in abundance. When we trust God with what we are lacking and have confidence in our abilities, we are able to stand alongside others who are suffering, whether in body, mind, or spirit. God works in his own way and in his own time, using us to bring encouragement and hope so that others know that the crises they face are never too big to bear. Amen.